like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Gotham Gear.
It's all my love.
So, welcome to the Soul Patch Podcast, the podcast where three expats discuss education, culture, life on the Korean Peninsula. I'm Kevin Mitchell, here with Jack McBain and Ryan Anderley. Guys, how you doing this evening?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
All right. I mean, yeah, it's been an interesting week as for always. You know, I found this article on Korea Times that I'm going to share. I'll talk to you guys about in a minute. One thing that's curious though, it got me thinking recently because it's about expat life, and we've been talking about being expats here, and that's kind of our thing. Before we jump into the article, just kind of a random thing that I was thinking about. What do you guys think is the difference, and why do we define ourselves as expats and not immigrants?
Oh,
I sprung that on you last, like suddenly here. That's kind of a weird
an
question.
expat is like an expat is 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and an immigrant is both feet in. I'm never gonna give up my American citizenship. I'll hold on to it forever, and I'll always consider myself American. But I live in Korea. I feel like an immigrant is actually going all the way, taking the kind of full plunge. And,
even the passport and going, because like I was thinking, especially for you, even more than us, although Ryan and I are here, you know, almost as long as you have, you seem, you know, considering you've only been back to the States, but one time you said last week, like,
now it's been 2 or 3. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The 2 feet in, that's a good. You're jumping in fully, and I think that, yeah, I'm pretty jumped in fully. But you're right. I'm not quite willing to give up my U.S. passport yet.
Brian, what do you think?
It's very difficult to get a Korean passport.
Would you say the difference?
I was about to go on a different track totally, and maybe that says something about my like political leanings, and it shouldn't, because I don't think I think that way. Maybe I do. My thought process immediately jumped to, oh man, maybe it's like some imperial thing, you know? It's like only Brits and Americans can be expats, you know? Like, would you say that of someone who was like who's from India, working temporarily in Seattle? Are you gonna call him an expat?
I would say that that's not
patriot. That's like
correct, but you wouldn't. But you wouldn't use that. No, there is that as well. That is very political. But generally, yeah, I do think, although I like Jack's definition, because I think that is pretty.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. I like his definition.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it, but there is definitely the factor of an expat is someone who is somewhat wealthy, going to work, you know, coming from a wealthy country, going to work to make their life. But although, you know, even immigrants there, I'm using that word, like the construction workers, they're going to make their life better by going into another country. So that's where I do think that is.
That's true. And we all go to immigration. I mean, we are immigrants. I mean, we do fall under that auspices.
Right.
And that's why.
And if you follow like the etymology of the word, I mean, can we break that down? Like, you're an expatriate, you're leaving, right? And we go back, we call it repatriating. So how is that not a permanent phrase?
I also do think that you're right. It always seems to have something to do with kind of like a colonizing essence to it. Yeah, an imperial, like a kind of.
I don't know.
You know, yeah.
I didn't want to take the conversation there. I wasn't sure. That was like my
get into American hegemony and all the sweet stuff there.
It does definitely seem that way, but I think we could go either way with the definitions of it. Anyway, that was just something that I've been thinking about, because this article is talking about, it's from Expats Insider, and it's actually a Korean Herald, a Korea Times link, and we'll put it in the show notes for everybody. But this article is talking about expats, and I just started pondering about what's the difference? Why are these people expats, and what am I, or what are we? But I think
it's a good question. Yeah.
It's just one of those kind of random stoner thoughts, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, the meat of this article is kind of interesting. It's talking about how Korea dropped. It ranked 47 out of 59 on an index-based. It's a survey to determine the favorability of the living environment and conditions for expats. So Korea is just not in the worst 10 countries of the 59 on this list. You know, they don't have all countries. I don't think North Korea.
So it's getting slightly better. It's getting just slightly better.
Well, so it says this is the full index. According to, I'm not sure where it was fully in other things in the past. In general living conditions, here's where it gets a bit weird, is Korea was 13th on the list of 61 countries in 2014. That's interesting as well. There's 2 countries that are no longer on the list. The article doesn't talk about that. So it was 13th of general living conditions a few years ago, and now it's then it dropped to it's 54th now, or 47th now this year. Sorry, it bounced around a little bit. So that it's dropped a ton on general living conditions, but just the overall rating is the 47th. I'm not sure where that was in the past.
Is that where
So
they
that's
account
pretty
for
low.
all these different aspects of life overseas? Is that what they're?
They looked at a number of factors. Yeah, I did some research. I went and looked up the original article as well on,
Oh, nice.
on internations.org. I only scanned the article because it's like a 200-page article. It's a bit ridiculous. I didn't want to look at the whole thing, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 categories. Leisure, or no, 8 categories including. So there's quality of life, leisure options, personal happiness, travel and transport, health and well-being, safety and security, digital life, and quality of the environment. And I've got the list of all of the countries here, but they don't really talk about all of it in the original article. They just picked a couple of the interesting ones.
Yeah, the thing that
Can you say that list again really quick? Can you just do that? Run down the list really quick. Say the list one more time really quick.
Okay, quality of life, leisure options, personal happiness, travel and transport, health and well-being, safety, security, digital life, quality of environment.
Okay. I feel like something's missing.
Yeah, but when I read that article, I read it with kind of a grain of salt, as I do with a lot of these kinds of studies, and I think that the 2 categories that they scored quite high in, I don't know if you're going to mention that, you probably will mention that later.
Yeah, but go ahead, we can jump around.
Well, the health and wellness, that they ranked quite high, right? Korea ranks really high because they have a great
health and well-being. It was actually 2nd place.
They have a great healthcare system here, and
Wow.
And also the Korea ranked quite high. What was the other category where they actually ranked pretty high?
Middle ranking.
It must be digital. Technology, of course. They ranked high. Oh, transportation. That's what it was.
Oh yeah, transportation.
Yeah, it was transport because they have the subway system is fantastic. And it's like when I thought about
digital life is 42nd as I.
Oh, is that right?
That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all.
Really fast internet. Yeah.
Right.
Seems strange.
Maybe it's because so much still uses Internet Explorer and ActiveX and that bullshit.
Yeah.
Like banking here is really frustrating. When I go back to use my American account, which I almost never do, but when I do, it's just like log in, send money, done. And the Korean one, although it's actually gotten a lot easier. I've now got it, like I don't need to carry that little card around when I want to send money. Yeah, I don't have to carry that anymore. I now have it set to just my fingerprints on my phone. So that's easy. When I did taxes last year or this year, there was some weird complications of like downloading a file to my phone to be able to upload to the app. Taxes are always kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, but I feel like that point is worth mentioning because I think it's something that some people listening to this podcast maybe are familiar with, that they would associate with Korea if they're familiar with, they had friends that were here or they've been here. And that's really changed a lot. I remember when I came to Korea, remember we started at Chungang, Kevin and I. It was pretty much essential that you had to have Windows Explorer to get onto the portal system. Now I'm all Mac OS, Safari, Firefox if I want. I haven't had any issues. This is the first year I was able to do, and we just talked about this last year, Kevin, you and I, we talked about getting Boot Camp for Mac because I was getting rid of all my access for PC leaving the office. I don't have a PC in the office, or I have a PC in the office. I don't have one at home, a Windows PC. So I wanted to be sure I had Boot Camp to be able to do any type of tax or things like that with Windows. This year I got away with it on Mac. I had no problems.
Yeah, I did it all on my
same as you. That little key card thing, the little dongle that random generate. I still have it because I feel like somewhere in life I'm going to need it.
Right.
But I do right now, everything is Face ID on my phone and easy breezy. No
Yeah,
problems.
so digital life definitely. So it is
That's
strange
changed.
to me that digital life is so low on this list because Korea is
Yeah.
very digital. I mean, everything is digital. Like the COVID. I mean, there was a question on here on COVID as well. When I walk into some place to check who I am, you know, I just like shake my phone and boop, here's a QR code and it registers me. Like it's just everything is digital.
Yeah.
It might be worth looking deeper into what the criteria are for that category, because that is kind of anomalous if that's what
Yeah.
it is based on. Which so
I
it must
couldn't
be something more.
find
They score
all of
the really low scores was mostly in the kind of subjective areas, which are like friendliness
Like what?
and what were some of the other categories was like friendliness and like
person.
ease of making friends, something like
Yeah,
that.
there was that one on here, feeling at home and friendliness. Yeah, so according to going back to the original, the Korea Times article, Korea received almost rock bottom scores for subcategories in the index, ranking 56 out of 57 in feeling at home, and 50th in friendliness, and 49th in finding friends. So those are different categories than on the other site that I have. But yeah, feeling at home, friendliness, and finding friends were all super low.
Yeah.
No.
Well, what do you guys think accounts for that, though? I mean, what would be why? Because we don't feel that way, right? I mean,
I
I
don't think
definitely
so.
wouldn't rank Korea that low in those areas. But I feel like
Yeah,
I'm
I
not the
wonder-
demographic though. I'm thinking 22-year-old, you know, university students and stuff like that, you know. People
Yeah.
in that
And-
age range.
But in that age category and in this time, you know, in the 21st century, I don't know. I have a couple of students that I've been working with in the last semester. They've been coming to my tutoring and looking for advice on meeting friends, because they're not Korean, they're international students. So they've been here for just 2.5 months, 3 months, and they're struggling a little bit. They're struggling to make friends, which is also understandable because they're taking their classes online. You know,
Yeah,
they're not even getting to camp. Yeah,
Right.
so
It's
there's
almost
other
impossible now,
reasons.
yeah.
Yeah. So I directed them to like a couple of things that I would do if I was their age, or I still do now, like Meetup. So Meetup, if you don't know, it's a website. You can go there. You can find communities that do just about anything. There's plenty of apps for either dating or making friends. And so I directed these students that, and it was the next week, both came back. It was 2 different students. They both came back and they're like, yeah, I just joined this group. I joined this group. We're going to go hiking. We're doing this. So I don't know how that could really be all that different, but
Yeah.
I haven't lived in other countries, so I don't know.
I don't know about comparing to other. The one thing that the article does say about that specifically was that they said 54% of those who responded said Korea was difficult to make friends with locals specifically. So that's an interesting part. Higher than the 36% average of all the other countries. The company that did the survey assumed that it was due to the language barrier, because 70% of surveyed expats in Korea said they do not speak Korean. Now that's a different thing that we can get into on another thing, is about specifically language and stuff like that. But
yeah, or lack thereof. Yeah.
But I still think this is surprising to me as well. Like I mean, I can't count the number of times some random Korean person came up to me and in English started like randomly bullshitting with me about something.
Yeah.
And so although speaking Korean of course helps, I mean, no doubt that you've got a whole new population of people that you can make friends with. That was never an issue for me. Not speaking Korean was not a problem in friend making. The problem in friend making is that I just don't go out very often. So this is I don't get it completely.
Well, actually, Kevin, you could speak to it a little bit more, maybe, because how old were you when you came to Korea?
25, 6, something like that.
Yes, you were quite
Wow.
young for the type of work that you had started. I mean, you were the youngest. You are the youngest in our department.
I still am the youngest, and yeah, I was.
Yeah,
I was.
the youngest.
Yeah, because I mean, as I get older, you do too. So That
Yeah,
works
That's
out,
how
yeah, that
time
works.
works, right?
right?
Yeah, so anyway, when you came, you were in your mid-20s and you had studied abroad in
Netherlands.
where? Netherlands. All right, so
Hmm.
that's radically different. That's much closer to like, your native culture, America. So
Hmm,
how
quite.
would you compare your like social fluidity in those two situations?
That's weird.
I mean, you're a classic case for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say the one thing that I did in both situations was that I really tried to find local friends, both when I was in the Netherlands, at the school that I was studying at there was actually a pretty big, even in my student house, there was a pretty big foreign community. I mean, my student house was all foreigners. Actually, my university had a big group. There was like 20 or more people from my uni back in Arizona that sent people to that university. So it would have been super easy for me to just be like, I'm going to hang out with Arizonans here. And I did, of course, from time to time. I went out and partied with the Americans or the Spanish or the other foreign kids. But I ended up getting into a group of Dutch, a Dutch group while I was there for a while as well, which they even told me they were like, we're a weird group to get into. They were heavy metal rockers. So like, yeah, I'd spent Saturday night just thrashing long black hair in this tiny little pub. But I really tried to hang out with locals a lot. I mean, I don't think I went out of my way. I wasn't like, you're not a local, go away, but I found that I was. Here in Korea, even when I was in my first year here and didn't speak any Korean, I joined Kung Fu Do Studio, it's martial arts, and I was attempting to communicate with Korean guys in that group. Although I was there with a foreigner who helped me translate, not always. Sometimes he wasn't there, and I still was hanging out with a couple of the guys that were just Koreans in that group. So I guess I just tried to find locals, but I didn't. Again, the language, they were happy to talk to a foreigner in their broken English just as much as I was in my broken Korean at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's another layer to this though that I'd like to talk about, and I think belongs in this podcast. When I came to Korea originally, before I started working, one of the first like I told you, I came here and I was very fortunate. I had this group of people that was kind of already here, and it was like a generally accepted concept that Korea is racist. It was just a general thing that was tossed around.
Yeah,
and
I heard that for
I
a long
never,
time.
yeah, I mean, that's a common thing spoken by people that I think have been here for a short period of time, or people that are easily offended and don't see the greater picture. Like, you're going to be treated different when you arrive in a culture that is so homogenous, and Korea is ridiculously homogenous, and less so every year, but it still is.
Yeah.
What is it, like 99.9% Korean or something like this? I mean, it's extreme.
Those are the kinds of people that are like, all lives matter. They go to a breast cancer march and complain because you don't care about brain cancer. It's like, you know what I mean? It doesn't have that little bit of a kind of a
it's kind of myopic. It's missing nuance. It's like,
exactly.
Don't mistaken someone's curiosity about you for racism.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it, and I've talked to people, foreigners, who, it's like, just take it down a notch. That guy was not trying to be rude.
Right.
Like, he's genuinely curious about you.
There was no animus behind the intention. You know what I mean? Like, there was.
Talking about like people staring at you because you're a foreigner.
I used to get this in Thailand all the time, and we also jumped to the conclusion, right, that they're all racist, and they all and because they had a word for foreigners, it's farang or falang. So you'd be walking down the street in our small village area, which is still in Bangkok but outskirts, and they'd point and just say falang falang, like, look right there, it's like you're at the zoo and you see a panda bear or something. And so we took great offense to it, and very in a very like performative kind of way. We all grumbled together, but I don't think that's not institutional racism.
Pointing it out like that, I think,
also
is really like, that's just, it's like, it's just pointing it out. They're not saying, I still get that. walking on the street and some little kid just like looks up and is like, Weegukin. And I usually just look at him like, Hangukin. And I just point
Right.
at him and keep walking.
Right, but they can also go further, and some mistakes, innocent mistakes, can be made. That first year when I was in Busan, I was walking with some friends, and someone came up to us, very enthusiastic, younger guy, maybe high school or early uni, and he was with his friends, and he was just animated. He was like, whoa, like he was shocked. He was like, whoa, foreigners, and I have tattoos and I have a shaved head. He walked up, he touched me, which, okay, coming from Chicago, like that's not a thing you do. You do
Sure.
not touch a stranger. That's a good way to get punched, but you don't react. It was just sort of like, I was kind of shocked. He rubs my tattoo and he looks at me, he goes, and he says in English, he goes, skinhead. And I was like, I lit up. I'm like, dude, no, just
Right, of
no,
course.
right? But I'm watching his reaction. Like, at least I had the wherewithal of the ability to watch his reaction. He wasn't laughing with me. He didn't understand what he was saying.
Mm.
He didn't understand the implications of what that is, probably. I don't know. But he didn't get it. He was like, like what? And then my friends are all on the floor laughing, right? Because,
Sure.
hardcore Ryan, of course, right? So, yeah. So, like, in that situation, I could easily see myself not taking that moment and being like, shut your mouth, instead,
Sure.
but, that's an innocent mistake. It's a cultural,
It's all, it's
misidentification
like
or
about,
something.
it's how much, how much leeway, how much space are you going to afford the, the people from another, from another culture, and, to chalk those occurrences, those interactions up to just, a cultural miscommunication, and not, it's not racism. I mean, I don't think that he would even understand the concept, like all the history that behind the
Yeah,
phrase skinhead,
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, there was
Yeah.
I don't know if this was true. This was before I arrived. I remember Kevin and I, one of our mutual friends, again, I'm not going to list names in podcasts, but there was a bar that opened up, I think in Gwangan-li in Busan, and they had just collected a bunch of Nazi memorabilia.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
it was
know
called,
it
like, the bar.
gets,
I don't know if that was the name. I
the
don't know if that
line
was the
gets
name.
weird,
But it was like,
yeah.
yeah, and so that the pub, I think, got shut down eventually because foreigners were like, yeah, no, cancel. That's not a thing. That's not going to happen today.
We're
But
not going to have Hitler Bar in Hitler Bar 2 and Hitler Bar 3. We're not, no, thank you.
We're not spreading that around. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I imagine the if it's an older gentleman that's opening this place, maybe he just isn't that up on history, or it's naive. They're naive or something, and they don't see it the same way. I mean, imagine if I was in Seattle and I opened up, what would be the equivalent? I don't know.
Oh boy. Well,
I could have
Seattle,
a
they're
Kim
pretty
Jong-un
sensitive
pub.
these days. So yeah, it
That's
wouldn't
the
take
same, yeah.
much, it wouldn't take much, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you are right about just the fact of Korea being so homogenous. That's the big difference of seeing racism here. I mean, there's racism everywhere. There's racism in the States. We just look at the news these
Oh,
days.
yeah,
My wife doesn't
and it
even
is
want to
here.
travel to the States these days. But yeah, it's just here, like, and that was a really big difference. When I still remember when I was traveling around in the Netherlands as a student, people spoke to me first in Dutch, because I'm just, although I'm not that tall and Dutch people are very tall, I'm just a random white dude walking around a majority white dude country.
You fit right
And
in,
so,
yeah. you
yeah, it
blend
was
in.
just like, oh, you're Dutch, and then I would be like, sorry, what? And then they'd immediately switch to English because they're Dutch and their English is amazing. And that never happens to me here in Korea, and no one mistakes me for Korean. That's an impossible mistake to make. I don't look Korean. So it is very different. Just like, I'm a foreigner, and there's no getting around that. You see me, just like, boom, that dude's not Korean in the same way that the other Koreans are. Even if I get my passport, even if I did go the full immigrant route, I still would be a Weigukin, and it would probably drive me more crazy than it's like, no, I've got the passport. But
So sometimes I like to think of this in terms of like, if you think of it like language, swearing in Korean doesn't mean anything to me.
Mm,
It doesn't hit the nerve or whatever, where, not that I swear in Korean all the time, not like running around swearing in Korean, but those words, that doesn't mean anything when I hear it, Yeah, but when you hear if you hear some swear word or something in your native language in a situation where it's appropriate or inappropriate, your ears perk up, and you just, it has meaning to it behind it. And I think that a lot of it is, there's no, what's the underlying meaning, how often do we take the time to actually try to understand that,
mm.
and I think
Where does it come
now
from?
we do a lot because we have a lot of experience living overseas. But I think when I first arrived in Thailand, or those people that you're talking about, I keep saying those people, but the people that just don't get it, that kind of
Careful,
end up
Papa.
going home, is because they
Yeah.
offer no space there. It's you're gonna understand all the nuances immediately, or I'm going to attack you as if you were from the same culture as me, same background. So I think it's those people never last. They don't. They
Well,
burn out here.
And further, like seeing your place in time and in culture. Like when you come here, I think it's very easy. I mean, especially when we arrived, more than a decade ago, it's even then it was easy to see this place as it looks different, but in a lot of
mhm,
ways it doesn't. A lot of ways, this is not like you're traveling to, some like rural village in Uganda. This place functions a lot similarly to an American city, an American culture. So sometimes when you're confronted with um, something that's different, that bizarreness really strikes you. um you're not ready for it, I guess is what I'm trying to
You
say.
kind of get lulled
It
into
goes
a,
beyond,
yeah. I
it
think
goes
I know what you
beyond
mean.
language.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to express. maybe
that's what I'm
maybe
still
edit that out.
curious about, like why the students, or what, not the students, I mean, I don't know how many people like took the survey, but why like feeling at home was so low. Why was friendliness so low? Why was finding friends so low? Feeling at home, like I could imagine that comes from, if you're coming from a Western country and dropping into, I know for me it was very strange dropping into Korea and not even being able to read the signs, not even being able to not read the signs, but if I go to Spain and I can't read the signs, it looks like I can read the signs, it feels like I can read the signs.
There's a familiarity, at least.
Right. Yeah, but when you drop into, some Korean pub street and it's just all neon, all Korean, and it just looks crazy foreign, I can understand the not feeling at home thing. But like Ryan was saying, I mean, we're still living in a massive metropolis that has English lines everywhere and subways that take you everywhere. And I mean, on the bus there's English, and not everyone is coming from an English-speaking country, of course, that is taken from this survey. Um, but I feel strange, or I'm a bit confused that Korea was so low on feeling at home when I don't know what other countries, I'm not sure which countries I would think would be worse or less
Well,
at
I'll tell you
home.
one that would be worse. America. Like I've known students who have gone to America, and they would have had a great feeling about the country, but they got sick and they went to the doctor, and they
Mm,
made the mistake of going to the doctor with no insurance, and then they are ready to pay, so they take out a $20 bill and they get hit with a $350, and they're like, I saw the doctor for literally 3 minutes, and I have to
mm,
pay $350. Yeah, and you haven't even bought your medicine yet, son. You know what I mean? It's like now you got to go to the pharmacy and pay for that without insurance, and that leaves a pretty bad taste in their mouth when they come back to Korea, and they can't understand that. How does that system? You know what I mean? Like, well, America's friendly. We have a good reputation, but if you get sick, they're not gonna. You don't. You better have insurance.
yeah,
You know what
especially
I mean?
coming from Korea, where again, the health and well-being was second place in Korea
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Or you go to America, you take a taxi, you better get ready to pay, at least in Minnesota,
Yeah.
because you
Oh
don't
Lord.
take a
Oh
taxi in
man.
Minnesota. I didn't
Oh
ride a
man.
taxi till I was 20.
I was telling a kid this today in tutoring about taxis. It was like, oh, this is yesterday. When I came to Korea, I came straight from Chicago. And as a grad student, especially, but not even grad student, even as a professional, you don't take cabs unless you have to, because
Right.
it's
Exactly.
just
Same in
really
LA
damn
too.
expensive. Like
Yeah.
you ride your bike if it's not snowing, and if it is, then you pray that your train's on time, or heaven forbid you take a bus, and that's life. And then if it's an emergency, yeah, you flag down a cab. I got to Busan. I was like, that was $4. I was just like, I know I can take the subway, but I'm taking a cab. I
Yeah.
was just like,
I still remember actually
I'm
similar
living the high
story.
life, man. Yeah.
yeah,
Similar story to that
Yeah.
for me. I remember when I was pretty new here as well, like no more than 6 months, definitely. And I was doing my Itaewon stage. I was like, okay, I need to feel foreign town for a while. So I was hanging out in Itaewon. And one night it was past Subway's closing. And I was like, well, can't take a cab home. Gonna have to wait for the subways to open. And so I just hung out for the next few hours and probably spent more in drinks than I would have taking a cab home had
Yeah.
I known how cheap a cab was.
I was in
wouldn't even.
Itaewon today. This is like 2021. Itaewon this morning. I used the call cab, and I'm in Huam, so I'm at Seoul Station. So if anybody listening, this is from Itaewon Station, a little bit further, and to Seoul Station, Huamdong. So if I had taken the subway, what's the subway cost these days? Less than $2, I think, USD.
Yeah,
1.25.
I have no idea, but it's got to be less.
Yeah,
than
something like
$2.
that. And I would have to walk because I wasn't at Itaewon Station. I don't live at Seoul Station. So I'd have to walk about 500 meters on both ends as well. I took the cab. It was 6,500. So like around a little less than $6.
Yeah.
And they won't let you tip. Even if you
I know.
try.
I mean, here's another. I got another story. It's not a taxi story, but it's I went to the doctor story. I got this is 20 years ago when I first came here. I think I mentioned last week I came here in 2002, so I've been here almost 20 years, and I got sick, and I like a good American, I didn't do anything about it. I just
As you
Jack
do.
Daniels and some NyQuil and and time, and just let it pass, and it wouldn't go away. And it was a sinus infection. And so I finally decided I gotta go to the doctor. I didn't know anything about Korea. So I went into the hospital and I saw the doctor and everything. And I got ready to, this is going to be hundreds of dollars if I'm lucky,
Yeah.
And I got my bill, and it was 16,000 won. So $16 to see the doctor, and the pills were like $5. And I quickly paid, and I ran out of there thinking they made a mistake. They forgot a zero at the end of the bill. And so at school the next day, I was talking to a Korean colleague of mine, and I said, "Oh, I went to the doctor the whole thing was $24." And she goes, "Wow, that's so expensive," because she used insurance. It would have been $3 or $4 for her. That's what she's used to paying. So I realized, we're not in Kansas anymore. I mean, it's just a totally different. It's just what they prioritize, So I guess it kind
So
of.
looking back at this original, I'm going back to the original article now.
Yeah.
Times, and they were saying that 84% of expats rate affordability of healthcare positively, compared to 61% globally, and 92% are happy with the quality of medical care versus 71% globally. So yeah, Korea's definitely got that down. Also did really well with transportation. Those are some things that they did. One other, let's see, safety, personal safety. Almost all expats, 92% feel safe in South Korea, and
Sure.
only 2% said they don't feel safe. So that's, I mean, Korea is definitely a very safe country. That's something that's still actually.
That's probably the number one thing I bring up when people ask me, like, what are the things you like about Seoul? It's a big list. It's not the only thing, and it's not like on the top far and away, but it is the top for me. It's the safety, especially coming from the city that I used to live in to all the way to Seoul.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
comparing those
Chicago.
two large metropolises, if you're living in Boston, Chicago, like most large American cities, imagine you just drop in. You're 22 years old and you decide you're just going to go explore. You grab your skateboard and you scoot out. There's a good chance you're going to end up in the wrong neighborhood. Sure. There's a non-zero chance you could have a a bad situation. Could you do that in Seoul?
No,
I don't even know where the bad
it's
neighborhood is.
comical. It's funny to think about it. You just laugh.
Like, you could just walk down the street with money in your hand like this all night,
You tape
anywhere you want.
$10 bill to your back
I,
of your
I remember
shirt.
being really surprised when I was first here, because again, I was working at a Hagwon that first year, and I would talk to students, young kids, elementary school kids, and they were telling me, oh yeah, I've got to take the subway home, and it's like 9 o'clock at night, and like, your mom's not gonna come pick you up, and I'm like, no, it's just a couple stations
Yeah.
away, and I was like, you're like 9, like what? Like I was shocked that like
And
young
I think
kids-
it goes a
yeah.
little bit too far here, because I'm as speaking as a parent of a teenager, so I guess I'm not thinking about my own safety anymore. My concern is always my, kind of refracted through the prism of my daughter's experience. Her is it safe for her? And I mean, there are no school shootings, not a thing.
Hmm.
That helps
Yeah.
me sleep at night. They have draconian drug laws here, but there's no meth dealers at my daughter's school. There's no it's just another thing I don't have to worry about. And
I'm gonna make you worry. There was actually just a news article I saw in the news. I don't know
oh
which.
god, is there
like,
meth
some high
now in
school
the
kid. Yeah, well, that's the thing. When Koreans do drugs, when I see it on the news, it's the
I know.
hardcore shit.
I know. They skip
they're
right
not-
over they go straight to like black tar heroin and
yeah, they're not just smoking a joint. They've got like the hardcore stuff, but it's still a very, very, very small percentage, of course. And I don't remember the exact details of the article. I just saw it in glancing the other day.
That's probably a
Yeah,
discussion.
any
that we
society's
could-
not going to be, it's not going to be without its problems here. There are
course,
social
of
problems.
course,
There
yeah.
are issues. Yeah. And I mean, you get somebody very quickly listening to this is going to snap back and talk about how the suicide rate here is quite high for kids, actually. And it's true. And
Yeah.
how, a lot of that is due to, lots of different factors, but the extremely stressful education system that most kids are going through. There's definitely, you can always find something on the side, but my point would be in response to that is that after being here for this long, and Jack, I mean, I think you would agree, if you take it all in sum,
Mhm.
this is, as far as safety, this is a safer place than Chicago.
Objectively true. I mean, it has it
Yeah.
100%. It just has
Yeah.
to be true. And and that's that. I guess it kind of takes us back to the article, and maybe we could expand this even a little, more broadly, and just that's if we're talking about why we stay here, like why I stay, like why. If the weird thing about is that I've been here so long now that Korea is my comfort zone, if that makes sense. It's like an old shoe, like I feel like I'm coming home again when I come back here. And that's weird, that maybe I have crossed the threshold of expat to immigrant. I mean, I really have my life is completely Korea centric. I live here,
Yeah.
I work here, my family is here. This is the center of my universe, this country.
Yeah, I mean, your math is probably similar to mine. Ryan's is just a little, because he's just a couple years older than me, but it's similar as well. But I'm of course the same, because I've been in Korea now for 13 years, 14 years or something like that, and I'm gonna be 39. So of my adult life since turning 18, I've been here like what, 2/3 or 70% or something of my adult life. So this is definitely what I know more than
Yeah.
That's a
I'm
big
around.
lot.
I've almost spent half my life in Asia, actually. Which and later we should go into how in the world do I not speak Korean? That is ridiculous. I mean,
That's
it's
another topic.
it's another topic. That's a whole like Jack.
Let's- One thing also that we haven't mentioned in the podcast is also our age, and our age when we came here was all kind of said disjointed in the first one. So I'm 42. Kev, you're 38.
Yes. Yeah.
And
And when's
I'm
your birthday?
44.
You're 44, and your birthday's coming up. My birthday's coming up, and you're 40. You're 44. You're older than me.
Yeah, I was born in 77. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
I've got some.
Guess
I'm,
we're all
I'm the,
pretty
I'm
much in the
the old
same
guy in the trio here.
Well, yeah.
That's
I
okay.
just wanted to throw some perspective for anybody that's listening, because we're talking about our experiences, and then last week we talked about our origins and how we came here, and I think for anyone listening to this, there might be some curiosity today, and maybe
Sure.
they're considering doing this
sure.
today.
I was 24
the
when I came to
trajectory's a little
Asia.
different.
Well, how old were you, Ryan, when you came? Were you
I
32?
was 29.
29. Okay.
29. I
Yeah.
turned 30 here, so that
Wow.
was like the big
You
year for me.
you made
Oh,
the
yeah,
cut.
your first year.
Yeah. Kev,
Yeah,
how
so
I
old
had
were
my
you when
30th
you came here?
birthday,
You were
yeah.
26?
I was so it was 2007. I would have been 25, 25 or 26.
You guys are pretty close.
I
About.
came to Korea. I was 25 when I came to Korea the first time, and I
I think I
turned
was.
26 in. I remember celebrating my birthday in Itaewon. So
Yeah,
you can
okay.
imagine
I
how
yeah,
that
so I
went.
was
Yeah.
about the same. Yeah. Yeah, I was about the same then. Yeah, like mid to late 20s when we first got here. So
Yeah.
almost the same there. And now we've all been here long enough that we're been here most of
We're
our
all
lives.
settled down. Yeah, we're yeah.
It's all.
We're lifers,
it's all.
you know. That's you
I think
expat, immigrants,
something
lifers.
as well. Something as well. Going back to the article a little bit and comparing our lives. I know that. I mean, because again, and everyone who's listening will know this as well. At this point, we all work together, right? We all work at a university, which is a pretty good gig as far as things go here in Korea. And that was one thing that Korea did pretty poor. Going back to the original article on internations, South Korea did not perform well on the working index. It was 40th out of, what did I say, 59, something like that. And expats particularly disliked their working hours and lack of work-life balance, both 50th for both 50 out of 59. 1 in 5 expats is dissatisfied with their working hours. So it's a little bit more than the average. Although it does say that interestingly, expat working hours are actually slightly less than the global average here. So, but I'm curious. I really would love to know. And of course, this doesn't talk about. This article is talking about like globally. It's just all the stats. I would love to know the Korea stats very specifically, since that's our focus. I want to know like what was the age of the people in Korea who answered this. I want to know this to compare to us.
Yeah, I would like to know more about that demographic. When you say like expats, I think at first we're all picturing, at least I was picturing, oh, it's the ESL teachers coming over here on gap year. That's what we're thinking of as an expat. And then, oh yeah, of course there's some outliers. There's that guy that's got some internship with Samsung or whatever like this, and you got, whatever. But what is the expat pool that they're pulling from when you're talking about working hours and job satisfaction in the rural areas outside of Seoul, which is like the rest of Korea? Isn't it like what was that article, Jack, in one of those textbooks you had? It was using real articles, something like 40% of the laborers in the rural area are from the Philippines or something, or
boy.
There's a ton of people from Southeast Asia working here.
Yeah.
Okay, are we including them? And they're like, working on farms, I guess, presumably, like,
so
or whatever.
I would say
those people being included.
That's a great question, because I think this could be. I guarantee you it's divided by class, and that I think it was. I bet the people that filled out the survey were mostly young, and were probably from from the West, coming over here either studying or a lot of. I bet
they just walk
through.
They walk through Itaewon with a clipboard.
Exactly. Yep.
So I am very curious about that. I will say that I know, like you were saying, Ryan, when we think expats in Korea, we often think of people in our circle, which is educators. And I do know that the non-educator pool of expats is getting larger and larger and larger every year. There are more and more and more people coming and working not as educators. I mean, one of Ryan, your and I good friends, is a German dude who is not an educator, and he's an expat here in Korea. Now, most of our friends probably are in education, but that group of non-educators is getting bigger. Still, I would be surprised if they had like the Southeast Asian farm workers in this survey.
Yeah,
they do have a quote from a Jamaican expat claiming that the working culture is problematic and there's not enough work-life balance. Now, I don't know what this specific Jamaican expat is doing, but I'm gonna stereotype here and say he's probably not in English education, and he's probably doing something else. I have no idea what, but I know they tend to want that American accent when they're looking for teaching, and so that's why I'm willing to make that stereotype. It's just because he's not speaking.
Yeah, but you
the kind
never
of-
know.
No, of course not.
When I was
Yeah.
when
I could be
first
wrong.
came
I
to
could very
Busan,
much be
There
wrong.
was a couple of guys we used to hang out with. I believe they're Moroccan, and it was much later after knowing them for a while that I kind of got to know them a little bit. It's like, so what do you do? What are you doing here? What's your actual work? And they're like, yeah, we teach English.
Hmm.
And I didn't say it, but it was like, that really surprised me because neither of you guys really speak English.
I thought they would be
well.
teaching
I mean,
French
they
or
just- they
something,
don't.
but yeah,
Yeah,
weird.
but yeah. So where there's a need,
Yeah, fair.
And that's the
So
other thing
you
is
never
like
know.
I find like in Korea is the jobs that are available there. It doesn't strike me as a place where they're going to bring somebody in to do a job in, let's say, IT that they could be filled by someone here that's already living here. So it's about that kind of supply and demand. And I mean, there's a huge demand for English education. It still persists. I mean, after 20 years, I still have work in this industry, and it doesn't seem to be abating. As a matter of fact, it seems to be ramping up even more every year. Do you guys get that feeling as well, or it feels more?
Yeah, opportunities just kind of keep coming as long as you're open to them. There's always something. Just last year, I was working on an editing project for a textbook series, writing dialogues for it. It's I think I used that phrase last week too, just saying yes to anything.
Mhm.
I've slowed down a little bit saying yes because I wanted to have more time for myself. But if I really wanted to, I mean, you guys would agree with this. Like,
Oh, yeah.
if you wanted to work 80 hours a week, you're gonna go figure that out. It's totally possible to pick up piecemeal. Like, there's so much.
Yeah,
stuff
you
to
could
do.
tape together, duct tape together a 80-hour work week pretty easily, I think. Especially if you're living
Yeah.
in Seoul. I mean, I think
I still think for per hour though, I haven't been able to beat, and it's hard to say what you do per hour as a teacher because as any teacher knows, your per hour work is extremely variable. Like, now we're coming into final exams and grading and stuff like this. And if you've got papers, life is different. But I've always thought of the work that I do at Chungang per hour. It's in my mind, that's my feeling. I don't think I can really quantify it, but I think I haven't beaten that with any part-time work. Kevin, how about you? You do quite a bit of like outside stuff, don't you?
Well, I mean, if you're counting private lessons,
Yeah.
then that might be more per hour than.
You've done better? You think you've done better?
But
Or like pretty
uh,
close, or
yeah, like if you get like part-time gigs at like a Hagwon or something like that, no, definitely not. But like, yeah, some private lessons, things like that could definitely be better per hour.
yeah,
Yes,
Busan,
but
I
yeah,
did. I had
this
some
is-
children that I worked with together, and so it was like Oman1 per student. And I had 3 students, so it was 150,000 won
Oh,
an
that's
hour.
ridiculous.
So I mean, but that was pretty rare.
that's a
But yeah, again, so
unicorn.
we're
yeah.
coming from this like weird
Yeah.
group, and so our work-life balance is quite high, whereas a lot of people, so whoever's doing the survey are not all English teachers, or
Well-
definitely not all professors at university. I did a really quick research. I was curious, Ryan, you mentioned that there's like 99% foreigners here in Korea.
Yeah,
I wanted to know what the number was.
Koreans, 99%
Yeah, sorry.
Koreans or something like that. What is
So,
it? What is it?
This actually article just came out about a month ago, end of April, and the foreign population is actually dropping, which is interesting, but it's down to 2 million people. So out of approximately 50, like we're at just under 4% of the Korean population.
Oh, that's much more than I thought. I mean, I was exaggerating.
Yeah, of course.
But
Because I mean, again,
I still
like, it's
thought
what
it
we
was
see.
more than 98.
The report shows this from Yonhap News. This report showed that Chinese accounted for the largest population of the foreign population at 43%, about 800,000 people. Then Vietnamese at 10%, Thai at 9%, and U.S. citizens at 7.3%.
Wow, that's
so
interesting.
How many Americans are here? Do you have a number on that?
7% of 2 million.
7%. Okay, so the vast majority is Chinese. Has that been expanding? Because we experienced that at Chungang, that it
That I
seems
don't.
at least our student population has been expanding rapidly.
Yeah, the
At least
article
it
here
was
doesn't
for a
say,
while.
but
Now it seems kind of.
but if we're looking then at this article, you know, they're talking about, I'm sure they tried to do at least a somewhat relevant study, and you know, tried to get not just American professor expats to answer this. So I'm sure they had, you know, a number of people. They had a lot of students, but maybe there were a lot of, you know, maybe, I mean, if their survey was at all representative, then they would have had nearly 40% Chinese people answering the survey.
The thing that's so interesting about that, when I started thinking about that, is like I would have, when you're talking about friendliness though, all the friends that I made for the most part were other teachers. I mean, that was my friend circle. And so if you ask me, am I really close with Korean, with a you know, my wife is Korean, but do I have a lot of Korean friends? No. I'm wondering if you guys do. Like, how would you do you have a lot of friends who are?
But I don't. But I wouldn't chalk that up to like a social deficit on my part or Korea's part.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really similar to like when I transferred universities when I was an undergraduate. I went out to Washington, and I didn't want to pay out of state tuition. So I had to stay for 12 months just as a resident and just work.
Yeah.
The work I always did was very non-academic work when I was a student. I worked in kitchens. I was a cook. So I was the oddball in most of the kitchens. I was the guy that actually was going to go to college or was in college, whereas everybody else was, you know, dudes. And
yeah.
So during that time, who do you think all my friends were when I got to Washington?
Yeah.
Who were all my friends.
The people that you hung out with.
I was a cook. I was hanging out with cooks. I didn't know
Yeah.
any students. I didn't know any students.
Yeah.
And then when I started school, what do you think happens? Well, now I'm hanging out with more students. And then when I got to Chicago, I'm working in graduate school. I'm going to graduate school. Same thing. All my friends, they're all students. I think it's more environmental for me.
No, I
think
that is exactly how it is for me too.
Similar schedules,
Yeah.
similar schedules, people having the same free time as you,
Yeah.
you know.
That definitely makes sense as well. And actually, like, of the Korean friends that I can think of that I hung out with and that I was pretty close with over the last few years, I haven't seen them in a while, but that's also because, well, I haven't seen anyone in a while, just because life is weird. Like
Well,
I
we're
mean,
in the
like,
middle of a plague right now.
Yeah, you're talking about, you know, it's like your circles. And well, one of my big hobbies recently was free diving in the last few years. And so I hung out with a lot of Korean people from the free diving group. Well, I haven't been in a pool in a year and a half. I'm kind of going crazy because of that, but that's a different topic. And so of course I haven't seen any of my free diving friends. I haven't seen any of my swimming friends, right? I haven't seen those people that I hung out with. And, you know, I have had a number of Korean friends from different groups, but it is really the groups that you belong to. And right now, I don't even know what groups I belong to at this point.
Yeah.
Well, I think
also, regardless of COVID, like having meaningful experiences, it's possible with Korean friends to be able to, you know, have meaningful experiences, of course. But like Kevin, think about how I know you. Like we've bumped into each other in foreign countries while on holiday, because we're on the same schedule. It's like, oh, dude, you're in Lombok right now? Call me, you know?
I actually did that with one of my Korean friends as well, down in Bali a couple of years ago.
Maybe it is possible.
But what about this though? Like you guys know that in the Korean, they refer to a friend as only someone who's born the same year as you, right? So you don't use the word friend to, you know, oh, have you ever had this conversation with a Korean where they're like, that's not my friend, he's older than me, you know, that's not my friend, she's younger than me. It's like, yeah, but you're friendly together, you spend time together, you drink coffee together, you talk, you're friends. Oh, okay, well, if that's your definition, you know what I mean? So I'm just wondering if
that's just a semantic difference.
Is that a semantic thing, or do you think that do you think Korea is you have to try a little bit harder here than in other countries? Like, you know, Thailand is the land of smiles, you know?
I don't know. I would say I think that's a semantic difference because yes, and it is kind of funny when they say you're the same age, it's like, and you meet somebody for the very first time and they're like, oh, you were born the same year. It's like, well, we're friends now. And it's like, oh,
yeah, right.
That's how that works. But I think that's just a semantic difference. I definitely think you can have younger or older people that are in English, in our definition of friends. It's someone,
surely they,
and I don't think that really affects it. They would just, instead of saying 친구, you would just say like, you know, 친한 동생, like it's a younger person that you are familiar with, that you're close with, and they would just ask like, you know, are you are you close with them? Are you chinhe with them? And so I don't think that's just a semantic difference.
So yeah, okay. Well, I was just wondering if that maybe the language didn't shine a little bit of light on the culture, but I think you're right. I don't think there's much there, you know.
I will say,
there's no there.
That two of the closest Korean friends that I've had over the past many years happen to be the same age as me, just coincidentally, actually. They were, about always the same. So I'm not sure if that means anything, but those happen to be the closest friends I've had.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we, I don't know, we pretty much tore that article up there. I think we went pretty deep there.
There's not much else that we didn't. Oh, there was one final thing that I think was interesting, but I'd love to see them do this part of the survey again, because they said that they also asked about COVID during this survey, and they said, quote from the article, when asked about the impact of the pandemic on their life, 28% of respondents in Korea said that they decided not to move back to their home country in the near future, higher than the global average of 18%. And I know last year when I was talking, I did a part-time gig at a Hagwon last summer, and I was talking to some of the foreign teachers there. And I remember one girl was like, yeah, I was thinking about going home this summer, but no, because, last summer, Korea was handling things really, really well, and the US was, not. But this survey was done in January. And as of January this year, Korea was, well, not great, but the US was still doing pretty shitty, and now things are a bit different. So I'm curious if that would change over time. But people overall were satisfied with the Korean government's dissemination of pandemic-related information, they said, in Korea at the time of this survey. So
yeah, and I think some of the greater subject of a survey like this, like, what is the happiest country on earth? What is the most expensive country on earth? What's the most expensive city? You got to take all that with a grain of salt. I mean, come on, Seoul is considered a very expensive city to live in globally. It's an extremely expensive city. But come on, I save so much more easily here. I get by on so much less living here than if I would in Chicago. And Chicago's supposed to be cheaper. So I think a lot of these surveys, are you happy? Is everyone happy based on a sampling of someone with a clipboard walking around Itaewon or whatever it might have been?
Sure.
I think it's a little, I'm not saying it's not true, but take it in conjunction with everything else and realize that your experience is unique. You can find a way, it's maybe a little harder than other places, maybe, but there's a way to live well for sure.
I think it's like cracking the code. Once you figure out how to do it, it's so easy. But that first initial jump from the US to Korea, or to Thailand, it's going to be jarring, and it's going to take some time to figure it out. Just like you said, how you going to situate yourself and find a place. Where am I going to go shopping? Where am I going to get my food? These kinds of things.
That would be an interesting topic to bring up in another podcast as well. Is how did we adapt to Korea, right? Like, because coming here, like you said, I mean, it's fish out of water. It's a crazy new situation, and I came here knowing no one. And how did you adapt to be the person that we are today, who is still here? Why did we not do the Midnight Runners? And that would be something to maybe help people as well, like, who are trying to figure out, like, what the hell is going on? Like, how did we do it? And I don't know if that would actually be helpful for other people or not. My story probably wouldn't. It's a very personal.
No, I think I think going a little bit deep, that's what I think these conversations are all about, is just kind of peeling the layers down a little bit, just going beneath the article a little bit and see what our interpretation, or from our perspective, and like you said, I don't think someone walking around with a clipboard on Itaewon is going to get to the bottom of these issues.
No, they were probably one of my students that I sent there for a bullshit.
That was probably one of your assignments.
Yeah,
it was you wrote the article, right? Yeah.
But yeah, I think we can go into, like, there's a lot of cultural things about that as well that'd be fun to talk about next time.
Nice. Hit subscribe on the just hit the subscribe button, like the videos, You can find us on all the major platforms: iTunes, Amazon Music, soon to be Spotify, Google Podcasts, all your other major platforms. You just look for us, The Soul Patch.
And soulpatch at gmail.com, right, Jack? If
That's right. Yeah. If you want to email us, you got comments or whatever you want to
Throw us a
ask
topic.
us something. Yeah, throw us
a
a topic.
And if you think that we are totally off base, I would love to hear that as well.
Oh yeah, no, we're not looking for you can have you could disagree with everything we said. That makes life more interesting. So
I'm a fan of this. So yeah, soulpatch at
the soul patch at gmail.com. The soul patch.
Nice. Okay.
All right, nice chatting, boys. All right.
Talk to you next week.
I'd like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Nothing gear.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
The quiet man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine. Jim.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
The brain.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Hey, Bobby. Let the bass go. Call me an eater, call me a dominant. Long face.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love. Obsolete. It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
8-1.
And Zarkov. It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
T-B-V.
This is a pen pusher.
T-B-V. Call me an eater, call me a dominant.